Ovid Metamorphoses, Book 9, lines 1 to 272, Achelous and Hercules. Lines 1 to 88, Achelous wrestles with Hercules. Theseus, the hero, reputed son of Neptune, asked Achelous why he had sighed, and the reason for his damaged forehead, to which the Caledonian river god, his uncut hair wreathed with reeds, replied, "You ask something painful of me. Who wants to recall the battles he has lost? But I will tell it as it happened, since the shame of being beaten is no less than the honour of having fought. It is a great consolation to me that the victor was so famous. If her name has ever come to your notice, Deianira was once the most beautiful girl, and the jealous hope of many suitors. When with them I entered Oeneus' house, her father, and the man I sought as my father-in-law, I said, 'Accept me as your son-in-law, son of Partheon.' Hercules, scion of Achelous, said the same. The others gave way before the two of us. Hercules declared that he could offer Jove as his bride's father-in-law, spoke of his famous labours, and of how he had survived what his stepmother, Juno, had prescribed for him. On my side, I said, 'It would be shameful for a god to concede to a mortal. He was not yet a god. In me you see the lord of the waters that flow in winding rivers through your kingdom. As your son-in-law, I would not be a stranger sent from a foreign shore, but a native and wedded to your own interests. Only don't let it harm my case that Queen Juno does not hate me, and all the punishment of the labours she demanded passed me by. Now listen, Hercules, you, son of Alcmena. Jupiter, whose child you boast of being, is either wrongly called your father, or is truly a wrongdoer. You seek your father in a mother's adultery. Choose whether you prefer this fiction of Jove as a father, or to be born the son of shame." As I spoke, he gazed at me fiercely all the while, and unable to act like a man and control his blazing anger, he merely replied in these words, "My right hand is more powerful than my tongue. As long as I beat you at wrestling, you can win the talking." And he came at me ferociously. I was ashamed to retreat after my words. I took off my green robes, put up my arms, held my hands, fingers curved in front of my chest in a fighting stance, and readied my limbs for the match. He caught up dust in the hollow of his hands and threw it over me, and in turn was himself gilded by the yellow sand. Now he caught at my neck, or you might think he caught me, now at my legs, now at my loins, and attacked me from every side. My weight protected me, and his attempts were useless. I was like a massive pile that the roaring flood assaults with all its might. It remains secure in its own bulk. We pulled away for a moment, returned to the conflict, and stood firm, determined not to concede. Foot was set against foot, and I pushed at him, with my chest full forward, fingers locked with fingers, and head to head. I have seen two strong bulls come together like that, when they try for the sleekest heifer in the pasture as their prize in the contest. The herd watches in fear, not sure to which one victory will grant overriding supremacy. 3 times, without success, Hercules tried to push my gleaming chest away from him. At the 4th attempt, he broke my grip, loosed himself from my constricting arms, and with a blow of his hand, certainly I confess myself it is the truth, he turned me about and clung with all his weight to my back. If you can believe it, and I am not seeking to gain false credit by saying it, I seemed to have a mountain pressing on top of me. With difficulty, I thrust my arms, pouring with sweat from the great effort it took, under him, and with difficulty freed his firm hold on my body. He pressed me hard as I gasped for breath, prevented me from gathering my strength, and gripped my neck. Then at last my knee touched the ground, and my mouth tasted sand. Inferior to him in strength, I turned to my magic arts, and slipped from his grasp in the shape of a long snake. But when I had wound my body in sinuous coils, and hissing fiercely darted my forked tongue at him, Tyrrhen's hero laughed, and mocking my magic arts said, "My task in the cradle was to defeat snakes, and though you are greater than other reptiles, Achelous, how big a slice of the Linnaean hydra would your one serpent be?" It was made fecund by its wounds, and not one of its 100 heads was safely cut off without its neck generating 2 more. I overcame it, and having overcome it, disemboweled that monster with branching snake heads that grew from their own destruction, thriving on evil. What do you think will happen to you, who are only a false snake, using unfamiliar weapons, whom a shifting form hides? He spoke and knotted his fingers round my throat. I was suffocating, as if my throat was gripped by a vice, and struggled to tear his thumbs away from my windpipe. Overpowered in this form, only my third, fierce, bull shape remained. So I fought on, my limbs those of a bull. From the left, he threw his arms round my bulging neck, and followed me as I charged off, dragging at me, my horns piercing the hard ground as he pulled me down, and toppling me into the deep sand. As if that was not enough, holding the tough horn in his cruel hand, he broke it and tore it away from my mutilated brow. The Naiades took it, filling it with fruit and scented flowers, and made it sacred. The goddess of abundance is rich now because of my horn of plenty. Lines 89 to 158. The shirt of Nessus. He spoke, and a nymph, one of his attendants, dressed like Diana, her hair streaming over her shoulders, came to them, bringing all of autumn's harvest in an overflowing horn, and, for an aftertaste, delicious fruits. Light gathered, and as the first rays struck the mountain summits, the warriors left, not waiting for the river to flow calmly and placidly, or for the falling waters to subside. Achelous hid his wild features and his head, marred by its broken horn, in the depths of the waves. Nevertheless, he had only the loss of that treasured horn, which had been taken from him, to lament. He was otherwise unhurt. Also, he hid his loss with a wreath of willow leaves or reeds. But you, fierce Nessus, the centaur, a passion for that same virgin girl destroyed you, hit in the back by a flying arrow. Hercules, son of Jupiter, on his way to his native city with Deianira, his new bride, came to the swift waters of the river Euenus. The flood was higher than normal, increased by winter rains, with frequent whirlpools, and impassable. He had no fear of going on himself, but was anxious for his bride, when Nessus approached, strong of limb and knowing the fords. "With my help, Alcides," he said, "she will be set down on the far bank. Use your strength to swim." The Theban handed over the Caledonian girl, she, pale with fear, frightened of the river, and of the centaur himself. Straightway, weighed down as he was by his quiver and his lion's skin, he had thrown his club and his curved bow across to the other bank, the hero said, "Let me endure the river, since I have started to cross." He did not hesitate, and did not search for where the river was calmest, scorning to claim the water's allegiance. He had gained the bank, and was picking up the bow he had thrown, when he heard his wife's voice, and shouted to Nessus, who was preparing to betray his trust. "Where are you carrying her off to, you predator, trusting in vain to your swiftness of foot? I am speaking to you, Nessus, the twice-formed. Listen, do not steal what is mine. If you have no respect for me, the thought of your father, Ixion, on his whirling wheel might prevent this illicit union. However much you trust in your horsecraft, you will not escape. With wounds, not feet, I will follow you." He made good his last words with his actions. Shooting the arrow, he fired across at the fleeing back. The barbed tip jutted from the centaur's chest. When the shaft was pulled out, blood mixed with the deadly arrow poison of the Linnaean hydra gushed out simultaneously from the entry and exit wounds. Nessus trapped this, and murmured to himself, of course, "I will not die without revenge," and gave his tunic soaked with warm blood to Deianira, whom he had abducted, presenting it to her as if it were a gift for reviving a waning love. A long space of intervening time passed by, and the tales of mighty Hercules had filled the world and overcome his stepmother's hatred. As the victor at Oichalia in Euboea, where he avenged an insult offered by him by King Eurytus, he was preparing to sacrifice to Jupiter at Cannae, when loquacious rumour, who loves to add lies to fact and expands from the tiniest truth by her falsehoods, brought her tale on ahead to your ears, Deianira. She claimed that Hercules, reputed son of Amphitryon, was filled with passion for Iole, daughter of Eurytus. The loving wife believes it, and terrified at first by the rumour of this new affair, she indulges in tears, and the poor girl vents her misery in weeping. But she soon says, "Why do I weep? That adulteress will laugh at my tears. Since she is coming here, I must plan quickly, while I can, while another has not yet taken my place. Should I complain or keep silent? Return to Calydon or stay? Should I leave my house? Or, if I can do nothing else, should I at least stand in their way? What if, remembering I am your sister, Meleager, I prepare boldly to commit a crime, and by cutting that adulteress's throat, show what revenge and a woman's grief can do?" Her thought traced various courses. Of all of them, she preferred that of sending the shirt, imbued with Nessus's blood, to restore her husband's waning love. Unwittingly, she entrusted what became her future grief to the servant Lycus, he not knowing what he had been entrusted with, and the unfortunate woman ordered him with persuasive words to give the present to her husband. Hercules the hero took it without a thought, and put on the shirt of Nessus, soaked in the poison of the Linnaean Hydra. Lines 159 to 210. The Agony of Hercules. He was making offerings of incense and reciting prayers over the first flames, and pouring a libation bowl of wine onto the marble altar. The power of the venom, warmed and released by the flames, dissolved, dispersing widely through the limbs of Hercules. With his usual courage, he repressed his groans while he could. When his strength to endure the venom was exhausted, he overturned the altar and filled woody Oita with his shouts. He tries at once to tear off the fatal clothing. Where it is pulled away, it pulls skin away with it, and, revolting to tell, it either sticks to the limbs from which he tries in vain to remove it, or reveals the lacerated limbs and his massive bones. His blood itself hisses and boils with the virulence of the poison, like incandescent metal dipped in a cold pool. There is no end to it. The consuming fires suck at the air in his chest. Dark sweat pours from his whole body. His scorched sinews crackle. His marrow liquefying with the secret corruption, he raises his hands to the heavens, crying, "Juno, Saturnia, feed on my ruin. Feed, cruel one. Gaze from the heights at this destruction and sate your savage heart. Or, if this suffering seems pitiable even to an enemy, even to you, take away this sorrowful and hateful life with its fearful torments, that was only made for toil. Death would be a gift to me, a fitting offering from a stepmother. Was it for this I overcame Busiris, who defiled the temples with the blood of sacrificed strangers? For this that I lifted fierce Antaeus, robbing him of the strength of his mother earth? For this that I was unmoved by Geryon's triple form, the herdsman of Spain, or your triple form, Cerberus? For this, you hands of mine, that you dragged down the horns of the strong Cretan bull, that the stables of King Augeas of Elis know your efforts, the Stymphalian lake and the woods of Mount Parthenius with its golden antlered stag? For this, that by your virtue the gold-engraved girdle of Hippolyta of Thermodon was taken, and the apples of the Hesperides guarded by the sleepless dragon? Was it for this that the centaurs could not withstand me, nor the Erymanthian bull that laid Arcady waste? For this that it did not help the Hydra to thrive on destruction and gain redoubled strength? What of the time when I saw Thracian Diomedes' horses fed on human blood, their stalls filled with broken bodies, and seeing them, overthrew them, and finished them off and their master? The Nemean lion lies crushed by these massive arms, and for Atlas these shoulders of mine held up the sky. Jupiter's cruel consort is tired of giving commands. I am not tired of performing them. But now a strange disease affects me that I cannot withstand by courage, weapons, or strength. Deep in my lungs a devouring fire wanders, feeding on my whole body. But Eurystheus, my enemy, is well. Are there those then who can believe that the gods exist? So saying, he roamed in his illness over the heights of Oita, as a bull carries around a hunting spear embedded in its body, though the hunter who threw it has long gone. Picture him there, in the mountains, in his anger, often groaning, often shouting out, often attempting, again and again, to rid himself of the last of the garment, overturning trees or stretching his arms out to his native skies. Lines 211 to 272. The Death and Transformation of Hercules. Then he caught sight of the terrified Lycus, cowering in a hollow of the cliff, and pain concentrated all his fury. "Was it not you, Lycus," he said, "who gave me this fatal gift? Are you not the agent of my death?" The man trembled, grew pale with fear, and timidly made excuses. While he was speaking and trying to grasp the hero's knees, Alcides seized him, and swinging him round 3 or 4 times, hurled him, more violently than a catapult bolt, into the Euboean waters. Hanging in the air, he hardened with the wind. As rain freezes in the icy blasts and becomes snow, whirling snowflakes bind together in a soft mass, and they in turn accumulate as a body of solid hailstones, so he, the ancient tradition says, flung by strong arms through the void, bloodless with fright and devoid of moisture, turned to hard flint. Now in the Euboean Gulf, a low rock rises out of the depths and keeps the semblance of a human shape. The sailors are afraid to set foot on it, as though it could sense them, and they call it Lycus. But you, famous son of Jove, felled the trees that grew on steep Oita and made a funeral pyre, and commanded Philoctetes, son of Poias, who supplied the flame that was plunged into it, to take your bow, your ample quiver, and the arrows that were fated to see once more the kingdom of Troy, as they did when you rescued Hesione. As the mass caught light from the eager fire, you spread the Nemean lion's pelt on the summit of the pile of logs, and lay down, your neck resting on your club, and with an aspect no different from that of a guest, reclining amongst the full wine cups, crowned with garlands. Now the fierce flames, spreading on every side, were crackling loudly, and licking at his body, he unconcerned and scornful of them. The gods were fearful for Earth's champion. Saturnian Jupiter spoke to them, gladly, since he understood their feelings. "O divine beings, your fear for him delights me, and I willingly congratulate myself, with all my heart, that I am called father and ruler of a thoughtful race, and that my offspring is protected by your favour also. Though this tribute is paid to his great deeds, I am obliged to you also. But do not allow your loyal hearts to feel groundless fears. Forget Oita's flames. He who has defeated all things will defeat the fires you see, nor will he feel Vulcan's power, except in the mortal part that he owes to his mother Alcmene. What he has from me is immortal, deathless and eternal, and that no flame can destroy. When it is done with the earth, I will accept it into the celestial regions, and I trust my action will please all the gods. But if there is anyone at all, who is unhappy at Hercules' deification, and would not wish to grant this gift, he or she should know that it was given for merit, and should approve it, though unwillingly." The gods agreed. Juno also appeared to accept the rest of his words with compliance, but not the last ones, upset that she was being censored. Meanwhile, Mulciber had consumed whatever the flames could destroy, and no recognizable form of Hercules remained, no semblance of what came to him from his mother. He only retained his inheritance from Jove. As a snake enjoys its newness, sloughing old age with its skin, gleaming with fresh scales, so when the Terinthian hero had shed his mortal body, he became his better part, beginning to appear greater and more to be revered in his high majesty. The all-powerful father of the gods carrying him upward in his four-horse chariot through the substanceless clouds, set him among the shining stars.